pure experiences.
Welcome to the Pure Experiences Podcasts.
Chapter number 19, Self-Knowledge and Problems of Life. One morning, the session was enlivened by the visit of a well-known social and political figure, a retired Indian diplomat, whose presence generally makes for good-humored and lively discussion. This morning, the subject was whether self-knowledge and the practical life in the world could go together. Were they complementary or were they contrary to each other? This visitor is not only not unfamiliar with Maharaj's teaching, but has imbibed it sincerely, though it would seem that once in a while his basic proclivities towards social and political catharsis would give him a feeling of spiritual instability, underlining the need for a quick refresher course. Apart from this, he loves Maharaj greatly and does not mind driving down the distance of about 100 miles to Bombay only to see him. His basic question was, can a man honestly afford to spend his time absorbed in meditation on the self to the exclusion of many social and political problems in the country and the world? The most refreshing part of Maharaj's talks is his unique approach to problems referred to him. He says that we should forget the conceptual jungle that grows quickly around any theme, as well as the directives of the traditional scriptures, and should get down to the fundamentals. Maharaj tackled the question of this distinguished visitor with his customary elan. Let us deal with the matter, he said. You and I now. There have been numerous great personalities and avatars in the world during the past 2,000 to 3,000 years. Each one of them had laid down his own list of do's and don'ts, depending on his own concept of the right and wrong and the needs of the times as he saw them. So far, so good. What have all these great men and avatars achieved? Have they been able to make the slightest change in the behavior of man or nature? There must be some reason, some fundamental reason, why they had not been successful. Could it be that the problem itself had been misconceived or misperceived? Could it be that attacking the problem directly was like attacking the heads of a hydra, which when cut off are replaced instantly by others, and that the only way to decimate the hydra was to locate its heart and strike there? Now, said Maharaj, what are the basic ingredients of any social, political, economic or any other problem? When we reduce the problem to its basic essentials, what do we find? The essentials are I, you representing the millions of people and the physical world. On analyzing these basic essentials, what do we find? All me's and you's and the earth and the sky, the moon and the stars. Are they not mere conceptual images in consciousness? All existence is objective. All me's and you's exist as one another's objects in the consciousness that cognizes them. And so far as the world or universe is concerned, is it in essence any different from the world which you create in your dream? Or more accurately, the world that gets created in your dream consciousness, and which is made of the same ingredients and inhabited by the same kind of people, including yourself, as in what you call the real world. Your real world, you might say, had been existing long before you were born. Well, in your dream world also there are seas and mountains and buildings and people which have obviously been existing for a long, long time. Are you going to solve the many social and political problems of the people in your personal dream? Is it not therefore true, continued Maharaj, that the heart of the hydra, the root of the problem is consciousness, in which the entire manifested universe appears? Indeed, is not consciousness the Hydra itself? And is it not consciousness on which the entire attention should be directed? Its nature, the cause of its appearance, and the other relevant factors. Since it is consciousness in which the entire phenomenal world appears, it necessarily follows that all manifestation will become sensorially perceptible only if it is extended spatially and for a certain duration of time. One must, therefore, necessarily accept the purely conceptual existence of the psychic apparatus of space-time as the prerequisite for the perception of the manifested universe. This leads us to the following conclusions. Without the concept of space-time, the manifested universe would not be sensorially perceptible, and therefore all events based on cause and effect and extended in space-time must also be only conceptual. Number 2. If the manifested universe is only an appearance, in the absence of consciousness, the universe cannot exist on its own, then the manifested universe is the reflection of something that is present in its own right. Number 3. Phenomena then are the objective aspect of the noumenon, the total potentiality, the totality of the known in the infinity of the unknown. Consciousness cannot be used to transcend consciousness, and therefore noumenon represents the outside parameter of cognition. Number 4. Noumenon, that which is, can only be, and it can be only now. In the absence of the conceptual space-time, there can be absolutely no where or when or anything to be. Now that we see that the world, problems wherein are to be solved, is only an appearance, let us get back to the me's and you's who are supposed to solve the world's problems. Before we start to identify the world's problems and proceed to solve them, should we not identify ourselves? We are relatively sentient beings and we want to do something to solve the problems in the world. Is it possible for a sentient being who is itself conceptual to do anything that is other than conceptual? What do we do from morning through night, except during deep sleep, other than continuously objectivizing? And is the human body, which is actually nothing but a psychosomatic apparatus, capable of doing anything other than producing illusory images and interpretations, whatever we may think of ourselves? And this image keeps on changing from time to time and there is nothing stable about it. We cannot but be an integral part of the total manifestation and the total functioning, and cannot in any manner be apart from it. We are better able to comprehend this in the case of a personal dream, which we can review after waking up. What appears as oneself in the dream with an independent identity is clearly seen on a review after waking to be totally devoid of any independent substance, a mere puppet being manipulated. Is it really any different in the world that we think of as real? Ponder over this. Could it not be that we dream that we are awake? We dream that we are asleep, while all the time life is being lived, all a product of the dreaming mind, objectivization going on in consciousness. And what is consciousness itself but only a concept which comes like an eclipse on the noumenon for a certain length of time? If this position is perceived directly, intuitively, then we know that in relativity, we are the conscious presence, the animating consciousness, and not the phenomenal object to which it gives sentience. When we see the false as false, the problem resolves itself. We are the content of this living dream, actors in this living drama, and actors can only play their roles, nothing more. The distinguished visitor heard Maharaj in baffled silence. He had no words to express what he thought or felt. Here ends the number 19. This is the famous problem of practical utility of this kind of philosophy, or you can say the spiritual knowledge. Is it really useful for our day-to-day functioning? What should we do? Should we simply meditate 24 hours, or should we carry on with the ordinary human life? And how can we apply this knowledge to make this life better? So Maharaj, as usual, does not answer the question. He simply wipes out the question. He is saying that look at your problems, look at your life, look at the human beings and their world. It is only projection. It is only a dream, or more accurately, it is dream-like. The consciousness itself is conceptual. So it is giving rise to this conceptual reality. And because there is nothing else to look at, it is very natural that this intelligent being, the human being, takes this dream as a reality. Note that the consciousness is that part of awareness which is reflected via the world or the objects. And the humans are just another part of the world. They are also objects. Their all activities are worldly activity, and therefore the knowledge is not applicable to this kind of activity. Just as in the knowledge of the world is not applicable in our night dreams. It goes on in its own way. So knowledge of what is actually not applicable in knowledge of what is not. What is not is Maya. And the funny thing is, Maya is the only thing that exists. The awareness itself is appearing as Maya and being reflected into itself through various forms of itself as consciousness. So when there is nothing really, when everything is an illusion, and when these so-called sentient beings with free will are nothing but actors in this drama, just stepping through their roles in what appears to be a cause and effect kind of situation, then where are all these problems? Are they of any importance? Are they real problems? Do these worldly matters really matter? So immediately we see that this kind of philosophy is totally useless for worldly day-to-day existence. You cannot use this knowledge in world. In the Maya, you will need the knowledge of the Maya. Those who are not interested, they leave the world as it is. They do not meddle with the dream. Or some are looking for a way to get out of the dream. But there is no way out. The only way out is to realize that I am not the character in the dream. As soon as you find a way, and you will enter another dream. This can appear as many things. It can fool you into believing that finally you are free from the dream. But remember, there is nothing else than Maya. Therefore, it is real in that sense that it is the only thing that exists. And it is also unreal because it has no independent existence. So it is the kind of very unsatisfactory answer that the only knowledge of the self is not applicable in the dream world, and knowledge of the dream world is not applicable in the spiritual field. So what do seekers do? Once they realize this, they let life happen as it should. You can actually pretend that this is real and play out the life. There is nothing wrong in it. And when we are finished, we simply move on, possibly to a new level of the play. So all this knowledge does is that the seeker may take human life and the world as a play now. It ceases to become a suffering, and it is no more a heavy life, burdened life. We can live it as if it is play, and when it's over, it's over. Nothing of importance was lost. So let us not try to mix the spiritual knowledge with the worldly affairs, because there can be such questions like, if this is dream, then why should I live the life? Or why don't you kill yourself, because this probably will make you free from the dream. And this is the classic case of mixing the philosophy with what we think is reality. It does not apply. Let us see it like this, that even if you kill this thing which you call as I, it is not going to achieve anything, because it's already not there. It is already an illusion. If one form is destroyed, others pop up. It is the same thing from which every form is arising. So loss of one form hardly matters. Loss of the whole world or the whole universe is like a speck of dust from which it is coming. It can generate billions of such things, billions of such universes in a split second. And actually it has already done that. So no amount of arguments, no amount of logical gossip is going to make any sense. All it does is it takes away all the worries, all the hate, all the suffering, and so on. Now it does that only when you are sitting quietly and the pressures of life are not on you. Otherwise you are like an ordinary person fighting with the life, fighting with this dream. Once you are done fighting, once you have done playing, now you can realize, you can remind yourself that it was only a play. It is not going to do anything more for you. Let us skip to number 21, the seed of consciousness. He looked fidgety and agitated. His movements were jerky, and he was obviously bursting with impatience. This was a middle-aged European, slim and physically very fit. It was his first visit to Maharaj. His restlessness drew everybody's attention to him. As Maharaj looked at him, tears suddenly welled up in his eyes. A compassionate glance from Maharaj seemed to compose him a little, and he gave the usual preliminary information about himself in a few words. He said he had been a student of Vedanta for at least 20 years, but his search for truth had proved abortive. He was deeply despondent and disillusioned, and he could not continue the frustrating pursuit any longer. A flash of hope had come to him when he read Maharaj's book, I Am That, and he knew that he had found the answer. Immediately he had got together the minimum amount of cash needed for the journey to India, and he had just arrived in Bombay. In a choked voice he said, I have now arrived. My search is over. Tears were flowing freely from his eyes, and he could hardly control himself. Maharaj listened to him gravely and sat still for a few minutes with his eyes closed, perhaps to give him time to compose himself. Then he asked him whether he was firmly convinced that he was not the body. The visitor confirmed that it was quite clear to him that he was not merely the body, but something other than the body, and, as was clearly explained in the book, that something must be the knowledge I am, the sense of being. But, he added, he could not understand what was meant by the suggestion, and he should remain continuously with this knowledge I am. What exactly was he supposed to do? Please, sir, he told Maharaj, I am now unbearably tired of words. I have read and heard them in millions and have not gained anything. Give me the substance now, not mere words. I shall be eternally grateful to you. Very well, said Maharaj, you will have the substance now, of course. I will have to use words to convey it to you. Maharaj then proceeded. If I say, reverse and go back to the source of your beingness, will it make any sense to you? In reply, the visitor said that his heart intuitively accepted the truth of Maharaj's statement, but he would have to go deeper into the matter. Maharaj then told him that he must understand the whole position clearly and instantly. This he could do only if he went to the root of the matter. He must find out how the knowledge I am first appeared. The seed is the thing, said Maharaj. Find out the seed of these beingness, and you will know the seed of the entire universe. Maharaj went on. As you know, you have the body, and in the body is the prana, or the life force, and consciousness, or beingness, or the knowledge I am. Now this total phenomenon of the human being, is it any different from that of the other creatures, or even the grass which sprouts up from the earth? Think over it deeply. Suppose a little water accumulates in your backyard. After a time, the body of an insect forms itself there. It begins to move and it knows that it exists. Then again, suppose a piece of stale bread is left in a corner for some days. A worm makes its appearance in it and begins to move, and it knows that it exists. The egg of a fowl, after being hatched for a certain length of time, suddenly breaks open and a little chick appears. It begins to move about and it knows that it exists. The sperm of man germinated in the womb of woman. After the 9-month period is delivered as a baby. The sperm, developed into the form of a full-grown infant, goes through the states of sleeping and walking, carries out its usual physical functions, and knows that it exists. In all these cases, the insect, the worm, the chicken, and the human being, what is it that is really born? What is it that has supervised the process from conception to delivery? Is it not the knowledge I am that has remained latent from conception to delivery and in due course is born? This beingness or consciousness, identical in all the 4 cases, finding itself without any kind of support, mistakenly identifies itself with the particular form it has assumed. In other words, what is really without any shape or form, the knowledge I am, just the same sense of beingness, not being this or being that, but consciousness generally, limits itself to only one particular form and thereby accepts its own birth, and thereafter lives in the constant shadow of the terror of death. Thus is born the notion of an individual personality or identity or ego. Now, do you see the source of I amness? Is it not dependent on the body for its individual existence? And is not the body merely the germinated sperm which has developed itself? And importantly, is the sperm anything other than the essence of the food consumed by the father of the child? And finally, is not the food something thrown up by the 4 elements, ether, air, fire and water, through the medium of the 5th element, the earth? The seed of consciousness is thus traced to nothing but food, and the body is the food of consciousness. As soon as the body dies, consciousness also disappears, and yet consciousness is the seed of the entire universe. Every single individual, whenever he dreams, has identical experience of a world being created in consciousness. When a person is not quite awake and consciousness is just staring, he dreams, and in his dream, in that minimal spot of consciousness, is created an entire dream world, similar to the real world outside, all in a split second. And in that world are seen the sun, the earth, with hills and rivers, buildings and people, including the dreamer himself, behaving exactly like the people in the real world. While the dream lasts, the dream world is very real indeed, and the experiences of the people in the dream, including the dreamer himself, appear to be true, tangible and authentic, perhaps even more so than those of the real world. But once the dreamer wakes up, the entire dream world with all its realities that then existed collapses into the consciousness in which it was created. In the waking state, the world emerges because of the seed of ignorance. Maya, consciousness, beingness, Prakriti, Ishwar, etc., and takes you into a waking dream state. Both sleep and waking are conceptual states in the living dream. You dream that you are awake. You dream that you are asleep. And you do not realize that you are dreaming because you are still in the dream. Indeed, when you do realize that this is all a dream, you will have already awakened. Only the Jnani knows true waking and true sleep. At the stage when the visitor was asked by Maharaj if he had any questions on what he had heard so far, he promptly asked, "What is the principle or the conceptual mechanism behind the creation of the world?" Maharaj was pleased that the visitor had correctly used the words conceptual mechanism, because he often reminds us that the entire creation of the world is conceptual, and that it is most important to remember this fact and not to forget it. In the midst of all the profusion of words and concepts, Maharaj then continued, "The original state, the Parabrahman, is unconditioned, without attributes, without form, without identity. Indeed, that state is nothing but fullness, not an empty void but plenum, so that it is impossible to give it any adequate name. For the sake of communication, however, a number of words have been used to indicate that state. In that original state, prior to any concept, consciousness, the thought I am, spontaneously steers into existence. How? Why? For no apparent reason, just like a gentle wave on an expanse of water. The thought I am is the seed of the sound Om, the primordial sound or Nad at the start of the creation of universe. It consists of three sounds A, U and M. These three sounds represent the three attributes Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, which have produced the three states of waking, dreaming and deep sleep, also named consciousness or harmony, activity and rest. It is in consciousness that the world has emerged. Indeed, the very first thought I am has created the sense of duality in the original state of unicity. No creation can take place without the duality of parenthood principle, male and female, Purush and Prakriti. Creation of the world as an appearance in consciousness has a tenfold aspect. The parent principle of duality, the physical and chemical material, being the essence of the five elements, ether, air, fire, water and earth, under mutual friction, and the three attributes of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. An individual may think that it is he who acts, but it is truly the essence of the five elements, the prana, the life force, which acts through the particular combination of the three attributes in a particular physical form. When creation of the world is viewed in this perspective, it is easy to understand why the thoughts and actions of an individual, which is actually nothing but a psychosomatic apparatus, differ so much in quality and degree from those of the millions of others. Why there are Mahatma Gandhis at one end and Hitlers at the other. It is a well-established fact. Fingerprints of one person are never exactly similar to those of any other person. Leaves of the same tree are found different from one another in minute details. The reason is that the permutations and combinations of the five elements plus the three attributes in their millions of shades would go into billions and trillions. Let us by all means admire what we think is admirable and love what we think is lovable. But let us understand what is it that we really love and admire. Not the conceptual individual, but the wonderful acting ability of consciousness, which is able to play simultaneously billions of roles in this dream play that the world is. To avoid being lost in the bewildering diversity of the play of Maya, Leela, said Maharaj, it is necessary at this stage not to forget the essential unity between the absolute and the relative, between the non-manifest and the manifest. Manifestation comes into existence only with the basic concept I am. The substratum is the nomenon, which is total potentiality. With the arising of I amness, it mirrors itself into the phenomenal universe, which only appears to be exterior to the nomenon. In order to see itself, nomenon objectifies itself into phenomenon. And for this objectivization to take place, space and time are the necessary concepts in which the phenomena are extended in volume and duration. Phenomenon, therefore, is not something different from nomenon, but it is nomenon itself when objectivized. It is necessary to understand and never to forget this essential identity. Once the concept I am arises, the fundamental unity gets notionally separated as subject and object in duality. When impersonal consciousness manifests itself and identifies itself with each physical form, the I notion arises, and this I notion, forgetting that it has no independent entity, converts its original subjectivity into an object with intentions, wants and desires, and is therefore vulnerable to suffering. This mistaken identity is precisely the bondage from which liberation is to be sought. And what is liberation? Liberation, enlightenment or awakening is nothing other than understanding profoundly, a perceiving, A, that the seed of all manifestation is the impersonal consciousness, B, that what is being sought is the unmanifested aspect of manifestation, and C, that therefore the seeker himself is the sought. Summarizing the discourse, Maharaj said, let us get it all together once again. Number 1, in the original state prevails I am, without any knowledge or conditioning, without attributes, without form or identity. Number 2, then for no apparent reason other than that it is its nature to do so, arises the thought or concept I am, the impersonal consciousness, on which the world appears as a living dream. Number 3, consciousness, in order to manifest itself, needs a form, a physical body, with which it identifies itself and thus starts the concept of bondage, with an imaginary objectivization of I. Whenever one thinks and acts from the standpoint of this self-identification, one could be said to have committed the original sin of turning pure subjectivity, the limitless potential, into an object, a limited actuality. Number 4, no object has an independent existence of its own, and therefore an object cannot awaken itself from the living dream. Yet, and this is joke, the phantom individual, an object, seeks some other object as the absolute or reality or whatever. If this is clear, one must reverse and go back to find out what one originally was and always has been before consciousness arose. Number 6, at this stage comes the awakening that one is neither the body nor even the consciousness, but the unnameable state of total potentiality prior to the arrival of consciousness. In consciousness, that state, with whatever name, can only be a concept. And so the circle is complete. The seeker is the sought. In conclusion, said Maharaj, understand profoundly that as I, one is nominal. The current condition of phenomenality, the seed of which is consciousness, is a temporary one, like a disease or an eclipse on one's original, changeless condition of nominality. And all that one can do is to go through one's allotted span of living, at the end of which the eclipse of phenomenality is over and nominality prevails again in its pure unicity, totally unaware of its awareness. Through all this exposition, the visitors sat still, as if under a spell. He made an unsuccessful effort or two to talk, but Maharaj quickly stopped him with a firm gesture, and he sat there in perfect peace until other visitors had paid their respects to Maharaj and left one by one. Here ends the number 21, the seed of consciousness. So the text is pretty clear, and the seed of consciousness, says Maharaj, is the concept I am. When this concept appears, the first duality appears in the noumenon, the duality of the subject and object, and then the objects appear. Because the unity is infinitely potent, it has all the possibilities, it can appear as anything. That process can be a little bit involved, but Maharaj gives a short answer to that. With the thought I am appears a vibration, and different kinds of vibrations then form different kinds of forms, and the activity of these forms appears in three ways: harmony, activity, and rest. And the whole play is now played before the consciousness. Without the I am, without the consciousness, there is no world, there is no body, and there is no person. So it is necessary to understand that this is the seed of everything, from which the thought I am comes, from which the whole world appears as vibration in space and time, and looks like as if bound by rules of cause and effect, has a history and has a future, and it looks like that this agent called the body has, we have a control on it, and we can make it walk and talk and do whatever we want as per our desires, which we are fully free to produce in any number of quantities. So this is the Leela or the play, and that which appears as the Maya or the illusion. And the ignorance is to assume that these things are real, the person, the body, and the world, and it is necessary to live the life in a specific kind of way. So liberation is liberation from this ignorance. That's all. So he gives a 3-point formula for liberation. Just see that the seed of all the manifestation is the impersonal consciousness, or here the absolute awareness is the impersonal consciousness. And number 2 is that what is being sought is the unmanifested aspect of manifestation. That's what we want to know. And therefore the seeker himself is the sought. From which it comes is that which we are seeking, and that is seeker himself. Simply knowing that this is the case, it is all arising out of me only, is liberation. There is no other liberation. There is no real liberation from the body, no liberation from the world, any kind of body and any kind of world. This is the only liberation, and you can have it now, simply by realizing that this duality is not present, simply by realizing the unity of I am and that which is not I am. It is one. There are some important points that he made in summary, and that is, first thing to remember is that this unity will remain as a concept in the waking state. The mind cannot grasp it in any other way other than as a concept. When there is no mind, then absolute awareness is already there. It is seen as already there. And this absolute awareness has no attributes, no form. Even the I am is absent there. And he makes it very, very clear that the split of the oneness into duality happens for no reason other than that it is its nature to do so, other than the reason that there is this potential to do so, and therefore it happens. The reasons are invented by the mind, And since the mind operates in duality, it will find a reason for all the worldly things, all the physical and non-physical things, but it will never find the reason for itself. It simply is. And the bondage is simply identification with the form. That I am this form. This is the root of ignorance and root of bondage. Another error is that the person is seeking the absolute or the reality as an experience. He says this is the joke, that the phantom individual seeks some other object as the absolute or reality or whatever. Even those who are seeking myself, in other words, those people who want to know themselves, the reality of I am, want to know it as an experience. That is the problem. That is what is keeping people from waking up, because they want to know the I am as an experience. All experiences are objects. That which wants to know is the subject. That which is seeking is the answer. So awakening is simply realizing that I am prior to the arrival of consciousness, with which appears the body world and all kinds of experiences. This is the awakening, that there is this infinite potentiality, absolute awareness, which is unnameable and cannot be experienced. It is one that is experiencing itself through various kinds of experiences, by reflecting itself in many, many ways. How can the thing that it has created will find it in another thing? That is not possible. So he says one must reverse and go back to find out what originally was before consciousness arose. That is awakening. You can call it I if you like. It is not so accurate. It does not make any difference.
Pure experiences.
You were listening to Pure Experiences by Tharun Pradhan.